Today, we are breaking down the top 27 corners in the 2026 NFL Draft. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. This is how I end up being able to grade my players. It's all on to 1 to 100 scale, as well as different tiers. And you guys will see throughout the video exactly how I end up grading them. But on top of that, you guys get a whole entire game grade, as well as an overall grade, or a game report, I should say, for my scouting report. But these are the grades of the players now. There are guys who should be shooting up. There are guys who I think should be relatively stagnant. And there are guys who maybe will be falling in the rankings because what must come up? There's probably something that has to come down as well. Do not take dream fits too seriously. It's based on where I think these guys will go. Maybe some teams I'll be looking for their skill sets. But Daniel Harris is the first corner. And you look at this, a Georgia corner that's 6'3", 195 pounds. You're like, hell yes, pound the table for someone like this. But when you look at somebody who is 6'3", near 200, and is extremely physical and very good with the application of it, there is probably going to be a lack of the finesse in terms of the overall coverage, which we will see today. So let's get right into this with his game versus the University of Texas. Right off the bat, he's beat with speed, showing a lack of acceleration as well. He did a nice job sticking in press coverage. He had a really hard time when it comes to north-south change of direction. That's what COD stands for, change of direction. And, you think of it side to side, east-west, like back and forth, north-south, and kind of a big deal. Especially when you're that tall, you have to be able to sink down. And it's a big issue for a lot of these taller corners when you have very nifty, shorter receivers. Gravity, inertia, shit matters because physics doesn't really care about our feelings. But let's continue on. Athleticism is popping up as a red flag. He really drifts when in off coverage. So something that you can tell off the bat, and you'll usually see a higher instincts grade when this ends up happening. And C, by the way, if you guys are new to my grading system, is NFL adequate. So it's like, I think that Daniel Harris does a good enough job to be able to last in the NFL with zone coverage. But, there are areas where I think he can improve noticeably. But in off coverage, that really shows both discipline and comfortability with yourself, as well as awareness of being able to track where the play is going to go and how to mitigate your issues. If you start drifting away from your assignment and off coverage and basically giving up more and more ground, that's just a recipe for disaster. And I'm about to bring up a line that is going to explain why I have him graded so poorly. But he ended up being beat by his speed again, especially this time, not just acceleration, but top speed. He did not seal the edge on an outside zone run. So something, especially at his size with his physicality, you'd expect for him to actually be pretty solid versus the run. Daniel Harris has not shown that ability so far. So I'm not a huge fan. Here's the line that I was talking about a second ago. And this explains how I also like to grade corners. I wasn't a big TJ Tampa fan for this reason. And I think it was one of the aspects that coverage grade didn't end up really working as the same as my opinion for TJ Tampa. Not saying TJ Tampa's ass in any way, shape, or form because we don't know yet, but so far he hasn't been worth being the pure starting corner. It was just something when I watched him versus Texas, I thought of him the same way. If this dude gets targeted every single play, it might be a completion. And for wide receivers, it's the same thing. I have this same philosophy. You don't measure a player by their wins or their losses. You measure them by every time they have to put effort out there. And that includes the plays where they are not targeted. Daniel Harris consistently allowed receivers to be open enough to where if an NFL quarterback had the ball and threw it his way, they're going to catch the ball. That's a bit scary, which is why he is the lowest graded. Very slow to build up speed, but he can end up getting up there. Pure press man reps are actually the one bright spot. He had an easy interception that bounced off his hands. Solid potential in deep zone coverage, so cover 3, cover 4. He is so bad when he doesn't have his hands on the wide receiver when in man coverage. He failed in catch man as well, where you're standing a bit off of the wide receiver and then you end up essentially catching them into your body. And I said, God has not delivered me from the mid DBs. This will be a theme. I ended up bringing this. I forget which corner, but similar to the Jameis Winston line. I was watching bad corner after bad corner after bad corner. Daniel Harris was not. And I ended up saying the worst corner possibly in the draft. Bottom line, Daniel Harris, he's big, he's physical, not necessarily the most athletic guy in the world. He can build up some top speed. So in cover 3, cover 4, I could maybe see it if you have some good press reps there, but This is someone who I'd really want to have multiple years more of starting experience and learning the finer craft of the NFL. Davis is next, and this is somebody who I really see bouncing back. This past year, Arizona was ass for him. It was really bad. And again, this is someone who I really do see elevating his game up to the top 15 by the time I do this again. So I'm praying, especially because he's going to be pairing back up with Ephesians Prysock, his buddy and his former coach there at Washington. I think this is going to be someone who I'm very excited to see take, again, that big step up. And I will say, when I graded Tecario versus Arizona State, which is the game that I'm going to mention, which is the one that I ended up having the worst feeling about, little did I know that I ended up having my favorite wide receiver in the entire draft, spoiler alert for the next video, going up against him. And he absolutely cooked Tecario. But let's talk about that game, because Jordan Tyson absolutely is someone that we need to talk about in terms of, that's an NFL wide receiver that Tecario will be facing in the NFL. Again, this is a player, he added an additional 10 pounds as well. He was 6'4", 190. He's up to 200. With the athleticism issues I've already had with him, I'm very surprised they do that. I'm just like, Tecario, I think you should get a little bit lighter, a little bit more nimble, but I don't know, maybe he's building up to be a safety. But this is someone who I've had some very positive opinions of. I really do think he has a chance to bounce back. But again, let's talk about his game versus ASU. He ended up wearing some skinny tail thing. I don't like, it was a tan towel, but it basically looked like a long tail. I'm just gonna be honest, it looked like a furry. I was like losing my mind over it because it was the brain rot of watching ass DBs. But continuing, bro's agility is like a MF battleship. So I'll use this term actually quite a few times. Like, you know how battleships are big, hulky, they're obviously not very maneuverable. That's exactly the mental image that you need to see with these corners. Like, they're just pretty much having an impossible time changing the direction they're going. And when you see Tecario adding weight, that doesn't help in terms of physics. Usually force equals mass times acceleration. Something called mass is increasing. It's gonna be more force, more inertia to deal with. So I'm just gonna be honest. I'm a little bit worried about that. Anyways, the next line I ended up saying, he has some of the worst change of direction that I have seen at cornerback. And again, if you guys are new to this series, this is like you're sitting next to me watching a game with me. This is sequential. This is not like retrospective. I said, yeesh, the athleticism isn't great either. Is he a safety convert? He has taken some free safety reps and did a solid job at them so far. So again, with his weight increase, I almost wonder if that is the vision for him to be more of a hybrid role there. And I said, oh Lord, a drag route exposed the fuck out of this ass athlete. Dare I say 4.7 to 4.8 on the high side. Genuinely, I wish quarterbacks would target people like this every play, and they'd end up racking up thousands of yards a game. He got bitched by blockers in the open field, did not steal the edge, leading to a run bumping outside and getting a big gain. So led down, hopefully Washington gets more out of him. This is a player who I had as a top 20 player coming into last year's draft cycle, because I really liked a player who's 6'4", had really good ball skills, is very smart, and, in off coverage did a really good job. But change of direction has been my biggest issue with him, and I really thought last year, I don't know what was going on there at University of Arizona. Again, kind of like a whole entire new regime, but it just, man, it was really bad, really bad. So I'm excited to see Tecario end up bouncing back, but it was very scary. And again, seeing him add weight didn't make me feel any better about his prospects. So next, let's talk about Elliott Washington II. And Elliott's a fun player. He's not someone who is like nationally known. I saw him pop off on like a rep or two when I think he was playing Notre Dame, but there's only one game with over 30 reps. So this is a one game eval, and that was versus Wisconsin. And Wisconsin got some dogs. I just got to admit, they had some very good players. But I will say it was like it was not very translatable game. But as you guys can see, I do not think this guy will get drafted. But regardless, I love showing some love to Penn State and the Penn State defensive players. So let's talk about his game versus Wisconsin. Again, his only game this year with 30 or more reps. Good job sticking close in press coverage, but I want him to get closer to going for the ball. So when the ball is targeted, I want him to get a little bit closer to the receiver. It's nice to be able to be on someone's hip, but there's just a different positioning. It's a little bit of an intricacy that if you're going to be a corner in the NFL, which, after seeing him pop off, I was really hoping he'd be a lot higher than this. That's an intricacy that you need to have. He needs to watch out for letting up early separation. Wide receiver got a clean release. And for a player who is like Elliott Washington, who's going to be a little bit more built in terms of the physicality portion, which physicality includes press coverage ability as well as press coverage form, you do not want to give a clean release. Like you're losing your main asset, and it was a little bit of a concern that kept popping up over and over and over again. His feet are a bit heavy. There you go. There's that low change of direction grade. He reacts a bit too slowly for my taste. I want more physicality outside of his initial press rep, especially versus the run as well. So I did not think his physicality translated towards the run. And if he jams someone at the line, I like what he does there, but I don't see it as consistently down the field, like where you see the corners just continuing to push and nag these wide receivers to where you're basically making their life a living nightmare. Elliott did not do that. So I ended up getting some Noel Williams vibes when he had some of his press reps because again, there was just like, oh, interesting. Number 29, I think his number is on Penn State. I have not double checked on him. It might be 26, might be 25. He ended up popping off, so shout out to him. It's another player that maybe I'll get to in some time. He gets beat inside way too easily in man coverage. He's an uninspiring athlete, has the long speed, but just extremely heavy feet when it comes to trying to accelerate or change directions. He got beat badly on a flag route, which, if you guys played Madden, it's pretty much like a post to corner. But he got beat by a flag route, showing his lack of change of direction and acceleration as well, because obviously you need to change your vector, and then you also need to maintain the speed of the wide receiver. If you are kind of getting caught in the sand, you need to show that at least you can accelerate out of it. He did not do either. And I also said number 8 is very good for Wisconsin, so shout out to that wide receiver right there. Not really seeing, and by the way, I post some clips of this over on X. I'm pretty sure I posted that one as well. Not really seeing an NFL cornerback, to be honest, and then he ended up whiffing when he ended up trying to stop a bubble screen. Jair Hill's next, and this is someone who I see taking a massive leap. He had a lot of experience, and I like to watch players' worst graded games so I can understand why they fail, and then we get to end up seeing them continue to succeed. If you do look at the grades, though, and I want to emphasize this, my grading scale uses C as NFL adequate. Like, I think that C is good for the college realm, and I think it's adequate for the NFL realm. There are just players who are great, spectacular at the college level that I think will be, good or great in the NFL. And I think that's kind of what matters right there. And then you have the aliens who are spectacular in the NFL. The NFL is just a dangerous game, man. And you got to be spectacular to be, adequate in the NFL at like a legitimate high level. So I am a little bit of a tough cookie when it comes to grading. I do think Jair Hill is going to be another one of those players that takes a big step up, and he's had some moments there for sure. 6'2", 185 is a very weird frame. Like right now, he's like at a corner 5 to 6 territory, and it's kind of like bottom of the 53 practice squad material. But I do think he's going to elevate his game to a corner 3 over the next year. But let's talk about his worst graded game versus Washington, which they do have really good players like Denzel Boston, who I think is going to be a wide receiver 2 to 3 in the NFL. So it's good to see him. Also, Giles Jackson. There's just good players there. He ended up biting off the bat badly on a double move and could not recover. He's extremely smooth, but he's just not a crazy athlete. So smooth in terms of change of direction. And then, you can see it's reflective in the grading system. Short range burst does show up. Has a nice, he has very good break angles in off coverage. He seems to handle zone pretty well. He needs to be more confident in his ability in off coverage. He backs up prematurely, leading to large separation gaps for short and quick completions. He identified a rub and actually covered for another teammate. So you think about like a pick play, and he ended up seeing it coming in, and he ended up adjusting for it. Didn't actually end up covering the player properly, if I'm not mistaken, but at least I get to see that pop up. He ended up slipping on a goal line fade. That's why a touchdown ended up happening. He needs to remain lower on his back pedal because he has the fluidity to change directions, but he got caught with too long of a stride and could not react in time. He could have flipped his hips with a way smoother transition as well. I remember this one. He was actually running with his back to the wide receiver, and the wide receiver cut. He ended up actually spinning the wrong way, which he took too long to react, spun the wrong way, and gave the receiver ample time to be open. which again, that's more of an intricacy thing, but that does matter. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you get from point A to point B if at point B you're letting up yards and separation consistently. You know, you can kind of try to work to get there, which is what we're trying to analyze because we have to project. But I mean, if Jair Hill goes to the NFL and consistently lets up yards, it's like the only people who genuinely are caring a ton about the why, if it's this consistent, of course, like that's a big asterisk, is the coaching staff because they have to make it work and make it work with Jair Hill. But I do think that's something that in time, again, that's something that will be a big area of growth for him. He had a nice pass breakup, but he's giving a bit too much separation off man for my liking. I ended up posting that on X. He got cooked by a flag route. So there's a flag route again. I love whenever I see that because it's the blend of change of direction, acceleration, and instincts. He showed nice change of direction, but the athletic deficiencies continue to pop up. He has not thrived in off man due to being a limited athlete. So again, when you combine not being an elite athlete with being a little bit unconfident in, or yeah, it is unconfident when you're in off coverage. So where you're continuing to back up, giving all that room. Remember, if you're a great athlete, we'll talk about Mansour Delane in a while. Like Mansour Delane can just go 0 to 100, and that's good. If you're in off coverage, that's perfectly fine because if you have that much room and you can close the distance, you're almost baiting the quarterback to think that he has an opportunity that's not there. When you're someone like Jair Hill who doesn't necessarily have that acceleration to get there, it doesn't bode well. And again, he has the little thing like the break angles, but break angles don't mean shit if you're going to be allowing the reception and having extra time on top of that for the receiver to react because you're giving too much room. That's just an area that he's going to really need to work on. But let's get back to it. He's giving way too much room and off coverage, leading to wide receivers being wide open. There you go. Just really liked a rep, only to realize I was watching Will Johnson. Gotta love it. The gap between him and Johnson is absolutely insane. He gave a clean release to a wide receiver and then ended up getting cooked by a wide receiver that wasn't even signed in the UDFA in the red zone. So Jerry Hill, I think that just more time is needed for him to grow and develop into the corner that he should be. But I think that is on the horizon. It's just a little bit farther than the consensus is kind of saying right now. And we're going to have a common theme in the next couple of guys, probably for the next like 6 to 7. There are very similarly top end corners that is in the consensus right now that I just do not have faith in at the moment. Again, the huge asterisk at the moment, but somebody who I do think is adequate in nearly every aspect of his game and has some actually really positive aspects to it is Jermaine Matthews. And this is my first jumping to that corner 3 territory. You got like remember at the start it was like developmental, then you had you had starter, fringe, or the corner 1, corner 2, then you got corner 3s, and then like corner 4 and beyond. I guess this is going to be more corner 4. So this is corner 4 right here. Jermaine Matthews. We'll talk about his game versus Texas. I do want to compile games that you can pretty much see how corners compare against similar competition, right? Versus Texas, Notre Dame for some, versus Ohio State especially. But let's talk about, he was on Ohio State. Let's talk about University of Texas here. And again, I try to poach games that are from later in the season as well, so I can end up seeing it. And if I see a player get injured in the middle of a season, like missing quite a few games, I try to see the games that they were healthy as well. But let's get back to it. Starts out the game with having some heavier feet. He ended up having a little bit of lag with his change of direction north-south, so back to front. I said, yeesh, these zone reps scare me because he's just in the area, but not covering the wide receiver. And this is actually really key and something a lot of people ask me because corner is my favorite position to scout. It's the one where I'm arguably possibly one of the most contrarian, but B, one of the more accurate when being contrarian. Good zone coverage is not just you stand in an area that you're told to stand in. And surprisingly, the best of the best actually know when not to cover the area they're told to. But most importantly, you're designed to cover players in a specific area of the field, not cover a specific area of the field. Like if you're told, hey, I want you to guard this little hook zone right here, I want to see the linebacker, especially as well as corner, DB, safety, whoever it is, to be looking at how the play is developing, seeing where the players are going to be entering their zone. Because if you're standing like over here, and the player's entering your zone from over here. Like, let's just say your zone's like right here and you're standing on this side and there's a receiver coming across and you have no fucking clue. There's going to be a gap there. Like, I remember, so I ended up playing like doing some linebacker drills a while ago. And I remember they're talking about like a forest. Someone's like leaving your part of the forest and entering somebody else's or somebody's property. Like, I remember they used that imagery, like leaving to entering. And, to be able to do that, you have to receive them into your territory. And for Jermaine Matthews, it looked like he was covering a spot of ground, not covering how players will be going into your ground and kind of projecting where they were going to be. But next play is off man rep that ended up being a bad one. He shaded inside and still got beat inside. He moves like a motherfucking battleship with no lateral agility, as seen with the horrible whiffed tackle. He did end up getting some momentum as the game went on. He flashed some acceleration when in off-man coverage. He is not afraid to be physical. I do like his mentality. He's streaky in zone and not showing much mental projection / proactivity, like I was talking about, seeing how the play was going to develop and then preparing for it accordingly, which again, if you start thinking about, UT, you have Sarkisian, which is why he got a little bit exposed during this game. Like higher level playmakers or play designers are going to take very much advantage if you're getting reps in the NFL and do not know how to handle a higher level of play design. And if you're just standing still, you're cooked. But he ended up having an up and down game, but ended off the game strong. Will want much more man coverage and allow him to press in the NFL. But Jermaine Matthews, again, not an elite frame, very similar to what they had last year at Denzel Burke. Which, if I'm not mistaken, I think Jermaine Matthews ended up substituting in for Davison Igbinosun in this game a little bit more than for Denzel Burke, which is surprising. We'll talk about Iggy in a bit. But Jermaine Matthews, I do think, has a clear role. He has I have a lot of issues with how Ohio State's defensive back coaches used his defensive back, so I'm not going to say 100% of it lands on Jermaine's shoulders, but I will say there's a lot that needs to happen for him to genuinely be at the level of what we thought Denzel Burke was even at the end of the year. So let's talk about the next one, which is someone who's getting some more first round hype. That is Malik Muhammad. And he dropped 12 pounds. He was 6'1", 190. He dropped to 178. That's a big red flag for me. I was almost going to put a negative it factor for that. I'm a little bit worried, but he does lack the athleticism. So I do like the idea, very conversely to what I saw with Tacario Davis when he's putting on weight when having issues with athleticism. I think Malik Muhammad needed a little bit more. So I understand the move. I just wish it wasn't 12 pounds. If he lost like 5, I'm like, all right, I respect that. I mean, 185 is okay. I can live with that frame. When you're sub 180, it's a little bit worrisome. At least he's really good versus the run, and he's a strong player. So let's talk about it, because I do still see him being a very solid corner. It's just there are some clear deficiencies in the game, which, again, upon my projection, because, again, this is a current grade, but I'm looking at the fact that he lost that weight. I do think if he ends up maintaining his strengths and physicality and run support and being very fluid, which you shouldn't get less fluid when you lose weight. You should be it's a little easier on the joints. But if you boost the athleticism score, I could easily see him jumping into that corner 3 to corner 2 territory. So I'm excited for him in that aspect. I just hope that you doesn't lose that physicality and run support ability, which I think is a very, very good aspect of his game. Let's talk about his game versus Ohio State, though. So far, not really asked to do much. So started out the game not really having a lot of things to do. It's a lot of off coverage, a lot of zone. Like, you're just kind of supposed to do what you're supposed to do. So again, you can't really bail on it if there's not really much for you to have in your area of responsibility. He ended up whiffing when trying to do a punch on Jeremiah Smith. Happens to everybody. A little worried about his overall range. Acceleration is definitely in question. I'm worried about his overall athleticism. Carnell Tate got some good ground on a crossing route against him. It happened a couple times as well. He's literally been a non-factor the whole game. The dude just lacks anything I really want play-wise. He got fucking diced by Tate on an RPO post. I posted that on X as well that you can end up looking at. It was a run, but Muhammad ended up playing Tate the whole time. He did not, if he ended up processing the run and that was the case, He did not go towards the run. So either way, it was a really shitty rep, but it was pretty damn clear based on where his head was the whole time he was looking at Carnell Tate and got destroyed. I do want him being inside shade as much as possible. Honestly, not bad for an off-man coverage on a deep route by Jeremiah Smith, but would not have done anything until after the catch. So just a little bit worried right there. Overall, yeesh, a lot of grabbing because he bit hard on a double move. I will say I'd rather you grab if you bite than that sounds like so kinky. I would rather you I'd rather you end up getting a PI rather than allowing a huge play, especially in college where the penalty is not necessarily the exact same 1-to-1 it's the NFL. But his acceleration's improved in short range, but not in a straight line. So if you're looking at him basically going from 0 to 10 in certain areas, it makes sense. But if you're trying to see him go from 0 to 100, the acceleration might be a little bit different. Another good off-man rep versus Jeremiah Smith. After getting yeeted by he ended up getting yeeted by a mecha in a run play. He got sat on his ass. He plays the run with more moves for block shedding than most corners do, but I need to see him execute the whole play through because he doesn't exactly finish. He honestly has been damn good in off man, and that is about it. So Malik Muhammad has that potential, especially if he improves his athleticism overall. He already showed the ability to play that catch man / off man coverage that is going to be very coveted in the NFL because that is like, I mean, if you can't play that, that's going to be kind of an issue. But Malik Muhammad, definitely somebody who I have a lot of hope for, but I don't necessarily have a high percentage with the confidence in said hope. Let's talk about TJ Hall next. This guy is a little bit worrisome, a little bit, but let's talk about his game overall. He has very good closing speed, a little late on reacting. So we're talking about his game versus Missouri. I forget if I ended up mentioning that. A lot of very good players, including a wide receiver of Missouri who should be going off. He has a pretty high drop rate, forgetting his name, but I ended up posting that as well. A little late on reacting. Change of direction is definitely popping up as an issue. In breaking routes have gotten easy separations, even with slower wide receivers. Definitely showing up as an off coverage corner. Has some short range juice, but is hard to see the long speed, which, by the way, the long speed did end up kind of being an issue. The short range acceleration was great, though. Nice downfield press, not consistently assertive versus the run. He had a good pass breakup. His top speed is okay. He's getting stacked, by polished release packages. Woof, he definitely got burnt deep. That's the rep I ended up posting. Number 2 on that team was the other guy. So it was, funnily enough, 2 versus 2. He has long arms, though, which is really nice to see. He's getting toasted by speed. Nice job popping a blocker in outside zone and pushing the runner out of bounds. He needs to improve tackling form big time, but overall, I mean, there's just some aspects of TJ Hall. You have that coverage foundation. I just don't really think that the profile he brings to the table is necessarily going to be super translatable to the NFL, but there's something promising there. I mean, Iowa knows how to make some good DBs. Colton Hood's next, and a lot of people are going to want this guy a lot higher. I was hoping for a spring weight on him. He's not even on Tennessee's spring roster right now. I don't understand what's going on with that, but let's talk about his only start of the year, which was versus the University of Arizona, which of all teams, that's a good team to look at. He's flashing some physicality early, a little laggy on transitioning north to south. He ended up being effed up by T-Mac in the slot, having to hug his waist. So Tetro McMillan ended up popping off more and more the more I watched him as well. So, I mean, it's good to see. T-Mac, I think, is definitely going to be a very good receiver in the NFL. Change of direction's an issue. McMillan just routed the fuck out of him. Plus, he had bad press form where the hands just ended up sliding off. So, ended up posting that rep as well. Good break timing and off coverage. He needs to be careful of letting wide receivers get behind him. I did see this quite a few times. He would almost be comfortable with the receiver being behind him. And I don't like it when receivers are in blind spots, especially when Colton Hood wasn't necessarily doing that great of a job. So, I'd really need to trust you. You need to be Patrick Surtain for me to trust you with guys consistently in your blind spots. But I ended up saying, yeah, there we go. We're back. Really nice flash of instincts in Tampa too. So, covering the cloud flat zone there. Not doing much to help out versus the run. He's heating up in man coverage at least. Ended up not doing too well there. Playing in the slot a bit as well. He ended up whiffing an off coverage from slot on a tackle. So it was zone. So he did a good job reading the quarterback's eyes and going to the ball, but he looked to lurk the ball and then ended up being out of position to tackle. So kind of having that self-awareness of what he can actually do. And ended up, of course, this was only start of the year, but continuing on. So he seems to be a bit too his intensity was a little bit of an issue. He jogged a bit too much for my liking. He has a slightly capped top speed, so burners might be able to get the best of him. He let up almost a huge gain, but it was not targeted when in cover 3 because he wanted to press at the line of scrimmage, and the slot wide receiver ran a corner route over him. So it was cover 3, and he ended up wanting to pretty much intimidate the wide receiver that was directly in front of him, did not process the slot receiver running behind him. And that could have been a huge gain, was not targeted by Fafita. But he heated up a little bit with some press reps. He needs to watch out for missing his punches, though. He's super susceptible to being baited into short routes with the wide receiver with the wide, and letting a ton of room to a slot going deeper, because it happened again, like I just talked about. He has a high ceiling, but with the frame and the slip-ups, he has a ton to learn. Would not be surprised to see him try to come out in 2027 instead. Let's talk about Ephesians Prysock next. Another player who I really, really liked, and someone who I still like quite a bit, but the more I watch Ephesians, the more he gets absolutely annihilated by receivers that actually have some sort of juice. And it's a little bit concerning as well. But, you look at this, Ephesians Prysock and Takara Davis will now be on the same team on the boundary corners, both 6'4", both 195 to 200. Both have issues with athleticism and change of direction. I will admit, I am semi-terrified when they go up against USC. USC has some explosive players that could absolutely get insane separation. But let's talk about the game versus Oregon this past year. A really good arm length and jam form. Has a tough time with his north to south change of direction. Really solid route development identification, so instincts right there. He ended up seeing a deeper receiver crossing into his zone. Like I said, you have to not just cover the area that you're assigned to, but see who will be coming into your zone for you to cover. He needs to watch out with grabbing when out of position. Solid top speed, flashed versus Stewart. So another player who should be having a big year is Evan Stewart. Excited to see him take that final step the way we've kind of been hoping for. Big play, he ended up letting up because he missed his punch and got out of position. Continues to get himself out of position. And he's not necessarily the athlete to get back into it. He's willing to put his head down in one-on-one. So, it is what it is. Okay top speed, but is pretty limited. So, I ended up saying, I was talking about his top speed being okay. I honestly think that Evan Stewart kind of, cranked it back a little bit. Press and zone guy only. He really needs to work on his press form downfield because he's blatantly and obviously holding and grabbing. Great job tackling an open field, and then he ended up missing another punch, so it's like the grand crescendo. But Ephesians is smart. He knows what the hell is going on. He's strong. He's physical. He's good versus the run. Would that make him better for him being a slot? No, because I don't think he has the short-range acceleration to handle the quicker developing routes. I do think there's a chance of him also being a safety in the NFL. Again, these guys who are smart, who have good arm length, who understand what's going on and can come up into the box, he would be a plus coverage safety. And I would hope that he could potentially have that role. This is going to piss people off. And for me, it pissed me off too, because I was so excited for Jermod McCoy. And I do think that, with him not having to share 100% of the weight of that corner core, because Tennessee necessarily didn't really have something to help him out. Now they have Colton Hood, which I'm excited for. I could really see Jermod McCoy being the player that we kind of want him to be. But people are talking shit about Will Johnson not being athletic. This guy is completely in another league in terms of athleticism. It's a big concern, and you see it versus Ryan Williams and stuff. This guy in off coverage is excellent, though. We'll talk about it in a second versus Ohio State. But I was very let down by this. But you look at the build. He's fluid. he's strong, and he's good versus the run, and he is smart. That's a good foundation to have. The problem is he tore his ACL in January. So he's not going to have the full summer. This could also be a 2027 player. I'll throw that out there. So starting out the game versus Ohio State, his footsteps feel a bit heavy. Athleticism is certainly a concern. You can see Carnell Tate gaining a lot of ground. And Carnell Tate is a good athlete. He is not like the epitome of athleticism. He's flashing some good instincts overall. He has very smooth hips, really good press form overall. I really like how he engages with receivers physically versus the run as well. He's sprinting nearly every play, not in a good way because it looks like wide receivers are going 70 to 80%, and he is going 90 to 100 to barely keep up. And I think that's a big asterisk because I love players, especially corners, that, even when you're away from the ball, like if you're not trying your hardest, that's usually when, especially creative play designers, kind of mask their intentions and take advantage of you when you start taking your foot off the gas pedal. Jermod is very high motor. I'm going to give him credit for that. Maybe I could have boosted him an it factor for that. However, this is like the wrong way to see it, is him just trying so hard not to get exposed on a play-by-play basis. And I'm hoping to God that this is something that he will kind of cover up, and maybe it was just, maybe there was a bummed hammy that was a little bit under the radar or something like that. And of course, an ACL tear doesn't help this at all, but maybe there's some underlying condition. But I am worried. I am very worried about him in terms of being able to, keep up with receivers who are not necessarily trying their hardest. They're not going 100%, but yet he is. He's doing a good job in off coverage overall. Jeremiah Smith is literally the best player I've ever seen, and it doesn't look close. I said, yeesh, bad sail route coverage. So, boom. On Tate, he ended up getting huge separation. He ended up giving a touchdown to Jeremiah Smith. It was a clean release off the line. Good job in run support overall. Really late transition to seeing a drag develop and let Emeka get wide open. Luckily, Emeka was not targeted. He does a nice job of handling his blind spot without overreacting. He can handle vertical routes and off coverage very well, but overall, one of the things I did notice that he does get very nervous when they're ending up getting down more and more. And this is something I've seen with Caleb Downs as well. So I'm going to give you an example of a very good player having the same issue, which, I think we all do. It is called performance anxiety. If you are in a stressful situation, do you handle it with more poise or do you get more tense? Jermod ended up being a bit more tense. For Caleb Downs, I saw him kind of fluctuate, and I think Caleb Downs has issues when he ended up being more tense. And so I think with Jermod McCoy, he might have a lot more success, especially with his athleticism deficiencies, the more he is calm. And I thought he was at his best when he ended up remaining pretty level-headed. Next, let's talk about Dalen Everett, another player who is going to be considered the top guy in the class or among them for sure. And he's a very high floor player. Again, whenever you have good instincts, you have good physicality and run support, you're going to have a place in the NFL. They're going to try to work with you. But I will say Dalen's biggest Achilles heel is probably the athleticism. So let's talk about his game versus Notre Dame. And Notre Dame had some explosive players, so that's kind of what kind of popped out in terms of seeing how athletic are you, how's your acceleration, how is your change of direction. You talk about Jordan Faison, you talk about Jaden Greathouse, you talk about Bo Collins as well. Bo Collins more the physical, polished release kind of player, who's a little bit more the contested catch guy as well. That was what you're kind of looking for. And he's a very good blocker, so it's good to see how Dalen Everett could respond to that. But let's bounce back to it. Good enough break on a hitch route, needs to make sure not to run into the wide receiver, but made a solid transition to pressure the quarterback. So there was a hitch route that he was supposed to guard in off coverage. He ended up breaking on it to basically cover it. He ended up breaking so hard that he couldn't stop himself and ran into the wide receiver. Luckily, that wasn't flagged, which it was within 5 yards. If I'm not mistaken, if it's 5 to 3 yards, you're kind of good to be a little bit physical, which is why press reps can happen. But he ended up transitioning it to go and run and pressure the quarterback. So I do like the fact that he ended up just, in that situation, realizing with another defensive back in the area, he ended up having the liberty to do so. He saw a crosser develop from across the field and proactively adjusted. Good angle on a break for off man on an in route. So I do like seeing that. Again, you have to be smart to be able to have the right angles. Like it's super key. It's a very small thing, but if you're running like this, or if someone's running like this and you're here and you run straight at the person, I mean, like, think about it. I mean, hell, you guys have played Battlefield or Call of Duty on a larger map. You have to aim in front, right? Because you have to go to where they're going to be. Some players, unfortunately, don't have very good angles like that, and they get themselves out of position, even if they make the right choice. You have to be very, very, very polished in terms of a mental processor to have those good angles, which is why I like Colton Hood for that aspect. With Dalen Everett, I also see that from time to time. Regardless, he can get beat relatively easily with speed. Nice pass breakup with some physicality. I ended up posting that on X as well. His acceleration is not great either. His zone IQ improved heavily throughout the year, and I think that was his biggest amount of success, was seeing that type of progression overall. He needs to get his head around for the ball. His biggest issue I've had with him for the past 2 years at this point. He can have trouble changing directions. Press an off-zone heavy system would be perfect for him. He's good in open field for open field tackles. He isn't getting toasted. He just doesn't really have the juice to keep up with the speedier receivers. Overall scheme specific, but has a really solid traits for it. And I think that's perfect. It's perfectly said. So I do think that, defensive coaches that would end up like using that physicality properly and end up utilizing that zone coverage ability, I think could end up having a lot of success with him. This is a player that you will not know, because there's only one game with more than 25 reps on his book, and or on his career, I should say. This is Jackson Vick, cornerback, kind of like boundary / slot cornerback at a North Carolina State. And you guys might be wondering, like, hey, where are the pure slots? And there's going to be a player, Jalen Kilgore. He's someone who, when I started watching him, I instantly stopped and said, this guy's not a slot corner. He's a slot safety. These are, if I have corners that are slot corners, I am only going to put them through the grading system of corners. I made this mistake before. I graded them with the same slot grade as slot safeties. There's a different mentality. There's a different deployment for them. So systems that will look for the smaller corners to play the slot are not necessarily going to be looking at the safeties that have some flexibility there. So I do like the idea of me transitioning to the fact that I can end up having corners that are slot corners being part of the corners. if you get what I'm saying. But I do think this is the highest graded player I've ever had that I don't think will ever get drafted. It's just someone who I really have a lot of faith in based on a very minute sample size. So let's talk about his game versus North Carolina. It was his only game with more than 25 reps. He made a nice adjustment off the bat and then lost track of the wide receiver, letting him get wide open behind him. He ended up popping off the bat, though. Like, after that rep, he ended up showing some explosiveness that I really liked. He was very twitchy and pretty damn fluid. He needs to work on the coverage part of the game. So I like that. I like that line right there. He's, of course, when you have so little experience, it is very tough to build up that consistency. He's willing to go into the box, so I love that mentality. Back-to-back assisted tackles on Amari and Hampton. He feels very raw in zone, which, again, that is a more polished part of the game with someone who has only had one game of 25 or more reps. It happens. I mean, that's kind of that's what experience will do, and this will be his first year being able to start there. He filled the wrong hole, allowing for a huge run, because he ended up playing a safety rep, if I'm not mistaken. Ended up being a big issue there. He ended up biting hard on a double move. Nice tackle to force a fourth down, though. He ended up being off coverage, ended up having a really enforceful tackle, third down. Ended up having a nice enforceful tackle to force it to a fourth and short. He flashed a nice jam at the line of scrimmage and ended up doing also past the line of scrimmage. His top speed's a bit questionable. I do not see much recovery speed, but the acceleration is there. He's built to play NFL nickel well. Nice punch. He ended up having a nice punch out for fourth down as well, pass breakup. I love his tenacity. He's always running and trying to get a hit in. Bad angle on Hampton in the open field. Ended up then following that up with a hit stick, though. And I ended up seeing him get a sack at the next play. I was overall extremely impressed. If he is in the nickel or slot, he won't have the issues with double moves that he dealt with on the boundary. So I'm excited for Jackson Vick. I could end up being completely right about this. I have never heard anybody talk about him. I was watching, I'm forgetting who exactly. I think it was a quarterback play against NC State. And then Jackson Vick ended up popping. I'm like, I should watch this guy. I mean, like, it was literally one of those players where no one's ever talked about this guy. And I ended up seeing it and I'm like, worth noting. Also, I should have ended up having Jackson Vick with this tier right here with AJ Harris. So I miscolored something. I always do it like once an episode. AJ Harris is next. He ended up dropping some weight. He was 193, and I believe he's 193. It might have been 190. Ended up dropping to 184. So I'm curious to see what's happening with that because AJ Harris overall is a really good player. Like, there's just some big losses he lets up, which is why I have that 2 minus hit factor. But let's talk about his game versus Notre Dame. Again, I like to have very similar translatable games that you get to see, apples to apples comparisons. Stood his ground and delivered press. I love that. Really liking his overall movement skills. I said, oh, fuck, I'm loving these reps off the bat. So he does have that excitement to him that I do like. Some top speed questions. Got mossed by a tight end, but he did have a solid contest at the catch point. He ended up having a solid bailout, so that's pretty much if you're at the line of scrimmage and have to bail deep. Like, how can you end up doing that? And then it was like 25 or number 29. He also flashed apparently in this game too. Maybe I should be. We might need to ask, like, feel free to ask me a question about this guy in a couple weeks. Maybe I'll just add him to the list because this is the second time I watched a Penn State defender and I ended up saying number 25 or number 29 ended up flashing. It's the same corner, by the way. Interesting. He needs to land his hands better because they can end up sliding off. He is a unique mover overall, so unique movement skills. He can get himself out of position. And then I ended up saying number 9, he ended up popping. That's Elliott Washington right there. There's the rep. He ended up being randomly out, and then Elliott Washington ended up having a couple good reps. Did not follow the right assignment to blitz and was yelled at pre-snap. So he ended up lining up incorrectly, ended up kind of getting bitched out by the safeties. So I'm not a huge fan when I end up seeing that. That does drop your instincts grade a little bit if you don't know where you're supposed to be before the play. I know that it's new to corners, but that is a part of the game, especially with corner blitzes and stuff. You cannot fuck that up. Like, that is you're leaving a portion of your field pretty much like booty naked. Right? I know Mr. Golden Mutt ended up saying it way better than that, but I mean, it was wide open. So you got to do it right. And especially if you're the one getting chewed out, not a huge fan of that. But I'm not saying it's a massive indicator. It's not the only reason why his grade was right there, but it was something small that ended up adding to it. He did a good job versus the run, operates well in the slot as well. He missed his hands and then that could have led up a touchdown when he ended up doing that. He got bitched again in press coverage, ended up being beat badly off the line, ended up being badly off the line again, and ended up being destroyed on a double move. So the reason I ended up doing that is that the 2 minus hit factor is his losses are bad. And then as the game went on, he sometimes got worse. I like seeing a player refine their ability and get better. So I'm a little bit worried about that. But I do think AJ Harris also has applications to the slot for that reason, which is a pretty high floor player to have. Chandler Rivers is next. And Chandler Rivers, somebody who I already graded the year before, but all of these grades are brand new. I scrapped the ones from last year because I updated my grading system. It might have been the same slides, but I can guarantee you there's some factors on there that I actually don't include on here because, honestly, frame, you can end up doing that for yourself. You could see it for yourself. And for athleticism, it's both speed and acceleration that I grade, and I combine them for an overall athleticism score. So just want to put that out there. There are some categories that are brand new, and with Chandler Rivers, I think he graded almost identically the same in terms of overall grade. There were some things that ended up shifting up and down, but just like a quick side note, because I know that not that many of y'all will be watching this anyway, and those of y'all who do actually care about this, like, for my grading system, I ended up having issues with certain positions that had a grade out of 15, right? Let's just say I graded man coverage out of 15, and I graded change of direction out of 10. I ended up grading the out of 15 category much more favorably to where if I didn't like you, I would probably put you at a 10 out of 15. But if I didn't like you as out of the 10s, I would put you like a 6 or a 5.5 out of 10. And that's obviously very different because out of 15, it's like 9 or 8 or even 7. for the exact same grade, but I just didn't feel as comfortable doing that. And so certain positions ended up being a little bit favored unfairly. So I scrapped pretty much all of that, ended up developing a system that was a little bit more like I ended up doing it out of 10, but I ended up reweighting that category to where if it was out of 15, I just did, well, for zone coverage, he's a 6 out of 10, but I multiplied it by 1.5 to give it the same weight. So those of y'all who are wondering there, we'll bounce back because the reason I did the explanation there, first off, is because you've seen another grade with Chandler Rivers, but on top of that, this is a short one for Ole Miss. Definitely processes the game at a higher than average level based on how he proactively adjusts his zone for the play's development. His feet feel a bit heavy overall, especially for his size. He ended up being beat on a seam with speed. I do like how he plays press downfield. The legs just feel weaker than most corners his size. Short and sweet. Chandler Rivers, though, I mean, there's a lot to love about his game. He has some really big flash reps, but pretty mediocre frame. It will be intriguing to see if he can end up sticking out on the boundary, but the short range acceleration does make me feel like, with the ability to process things very well, very quickly, could end up working very well in the slot. Shout out, oh man, I'm forgetting. I think, was it Jim? Jim might have recommended this one. Jonquise Hardaway. It might be Jonquise Hardaway. Cornerback out of University of Kentucky. I mean, this guy, he's built well, 6'3", 191. And this is someone who has a little bit of experience. JQ Hardaway is actually what he goes by. So I would think it might be Jonquise, it might be Jonquise. But I don't know. He might be a Frenchman. I think Jonquise would be a pretty damn baller name, but Hardaway as well is sick. Let's talk about his game versus Texas. Again, I like seeing these bigger corners being challenged by smaller, niftier receivers, seeing how they can end up handling them. Nice job in off man on a deep hitch route. Solid explosiveness in short space. Good pass breakup on the goal line, showing both patience and vision versus Golden. He is not great with the 10 to 60 acceleration. So you talked about 0 to 10, right? Very, very short range, like kind of like getting from here to here. That could be there. But if you're trying to accelerate to your top speed, there is that next tier of acceleration that I'm talking about. So I don't really like off coverage, but it's not bad. He had a slip up in transitioning north to south, but he flips his hips well. We'll see if this is a change of direction issue or just a one-time thing. Top speed may be a concern. Does have some north to south change of direction issues. He does a much better job when closer to the wide receiver in press. Not afraid of contact, but not effective versus offensive line. It's a weird conundrum. I did not understand why he could not play the run very well because he is very physical. I really think that he has that potential in there, which you could look at it as like a big disappointment, or in my case, because he's also relatively newer to the position, I really like the potential for him to apply what I already have seen in a way that he hasn't yet. So there's a big growth potential there into a legit corner too. But regardless, his backpedal to side change of direction is great. 90-degree change of direction has been fluid. It is the hard 180-degree turns like a hitch that get to him. So if he's backpedaling and then you run an in route, he actually changes direction very well. But if you're going to run a hitch, stopping and then reversing is kind of more of an issue for him. Built to play press coverage. Top speed is capped as seen on a bond crossing route. It's an easy way for me whenever I see top speed. Like for seam routes, a lot of wide receivers show some really good acceleration and range in the short. Not many of them are going to go 100% the whole rep after a certain range. If the quarterback hasn't thrown it, they're not throwing you the ball. Like, unfortunately, not everybody has a 90-yard range. But on crossing routes where you're consistently being a target for the quarterback, you do get to see like, okay, well, are they keeping up with the top speed? Are they gaining ground? Is the wide receiver slowing in a soft spot? What is that why he's gaining ground? There's a lot of things, a lot of intricacies that you'll see, but it's probably one of the plays that you'll actually get to see, or like a drag route as well, the most potential for actually seeing apples to apples on top speed comparisons. Because if a player is really trying to haul ass to get to point A to point B, most likely you'll have to also see the corner trying to catch up with them. And it's a good way to be able to see it. Again, you're not asking for a lesson on how to watch corners, but I'm just telling you how I end up doing it. Otherwise, why are you even watching this? But he's built to play press, top speed, big cap. There we go. He will do well in cover 3 and cover 4 systems as well. He slipped a tackle. He has been a non-factor to ball carriers. His north-south change of direction has been an issue for sure. Had a nice pass breakup deep. Ended up having another one, which is weird. I did not see PFF credit him with like 3 pass breakups. I've never seen such a good press corner that was so bad versus the run. Still, a lot of potential there for Jonquise J.Q. Hardaway. Josh Moten's next, corner who transitioned from, I believe, Texas A&M to Marshall, now to Southern Mississippi. I don't get that. I also don't get how he's not a good athlete at 164 pounds, but he's also awkwardly really good versus the run, and he's also really physical. It's like he identifies as a bigger corner, like the pluses and minuses with it, but he just can't change his physique. It's really weird. Let's talk about his game. Like, the only one that we have, like at least the general scouting community that doesn't work for a big name organization. The sources that we kind of all share. The one game that we have consistently is Ohio State. And it's the game that, you really wanted to see too. First off, he's not afraid of contact. He had an interception in off coverage versus Jeremiah Smith. That's kind of like the big one. Not seeing a crazy athlete at all, to be honest. He got beat by Q in open space to the outside by Quinchon. Worried about the stick bug being 4.5 on the 40s. He might even be a little bit slower than that. Handled a double move quite well in off coverage. Far from afraid to get his hands dirty. I love the mentality. His start-stop is excellent. Solid pursuit angles as well in off-man coverage. Great job picking up the deep crosser when the safety went for another wide receiver. It's a shame he's not 200 because he plays like it with physicality, but also the lack of speed. Ended up being subbed out, of course, as the play ended up racking up the score count and the backups ended up coming in. But, I mean, Josh Moten is one of the best corners talent-wise I've studied for the lack of faith I have in him at the next level because of that frame. It's scary as shit. When you're sub 170, that's a big red flag, and you need to be 4.2s. You need to be. I hated it. Like, I really do hate seeing this, but Josh Moten, he might have gained weight. Off the top of my head, I don't know if the exact number's out for, this one might have been one that I fucked up on. I think he might be up to 170, but even with it, him being so light, and him not having the athleticism is so scary. I don't get it. But if he were 200 pounds, this would make so much more sense. And I just don't get it. But Josh Moten, we'll see if it ends up working out. I really hope it does. DJ McKinney's next. This dude dropped 10 pounds randomly. I don't understand why. He's now listed at 180. And this is someone who had a lot of faith in. But I am really worried about it. Let's talk about his game versus Kansas because there's some really good receivers on him. He missed his punch on a slant, leading to a moderate gain. He looks past the blocker versus the run, which is a big plus. Some corners end up being like very focused on the player who's blocking them rather than actually stopping the run. Nice job passing off a vertical route and covering a wheel. Almost seemed to know the route concept of a highly complex play and handled the switch perfectly. Pretty damn smart overall in zone, so really good instincts grade right there. Regardless, back to it, not a fan of how much he jogs. So I could have knocked his grade down for that as well. Good use of physicality when he jams at the line of scrimmage. Has a tough time on initial acceleration with double moves. He has a calmness to him in off coverage that is a big plus. He had a good pursuit drill. So pursuit drill is actually funnily how I ended off my career playing football. I did actually play 7 years, but the whole entire reason why my nose has a bend to it is because I was playing actually linebacker at the time, in that drill at least. And a pursuit drill is 3 defenders, 1 ball carrier, 1 over pursues, 1 under pursues, 1 pursues the actual player, right? Because, if they, go back, they run into somebody. They go 2 forward, they bump into somebody. And basically the ball carrier, it was just like he ended up trying to flash a little bit because, again, we're all trying to get reps and stuff. And he tried to do a swim move over me, caught me with the elbow right here. But, sending me back to the battlefront. DJ McKinney ended up over pursuing properly. Like, it looked like it was textbook. So I really did like seeing that. So you guys also get a little bit of lore there. I don't know if I've ever mentioned that in a stream on the show, but that is why I stopped playing football, because it ended up snapping my nose, gave me a bad concussion, and at that point, there were enough concussions for me to say, based on the fact that I was not an elite build, I was no longer like 90th percentile in weight and height, it was time to hit the pause and, like actually focus on, something that mattered, which was my brain. But, we're here now. That's why I ended up loving football so much because deep down, I wish I could still play, but, we end up talking about it instead. But I at least do have at least some experience in that realm. But good use of physicality overall. Has a calmness in and off coverage, good pursuit drill. Change of direction seems a bit tough. So that's why his change of direction grade slipped a little bit. I thought he was a little bit more fluid, but the more I watched him, the more issues I had with it. He has been the worst in the slot. It's not great. It is definitely not great. He definitely doesn't belong on the boundary. He missed a punch in the slot, allowing a wide open seam route, and then was not targeted as well. So overall, DJ McKinney, a lot of potential there, but really concerned about him dropping weight. I don't know what's up with that. TBD. Ricardo Hallman's next. This is a guy who I continue like fluctuating on and how I feel about him, but overall he does have some he's consistently been super smooth, knows how to handle off coverage. Like he's a very fun player. Let's talk about his game versus Oregon. I like how he floats in short space, and a lot of players you'll hear me talk about heavy feet. Heavy feet, the antithesis of that is floating. Like certain players are just so light on their feet that they literally don't feel like they're on the ground. And that is really good for changing directions. A good job on a double move, but lacked the top speed to contest the catch. I do like how he presses downfield using one arm. So, you pretty much aren't like exactly overextending yourself. It keeps you like aware of where the receiver is and you're also pestering him, but you're also not necessarily devoting 100% of your form and your energy to kind of messing up with their game. So it's a very something that I haven't seen with any of the other corners this year, but I did like that he did. But he can definitely pick up speed, but he will be beat by speed of receivers. Nice job in cover 3. Because of his range issues versus speed wide receivers, I'd want to see him more shaded inside because he also uses the sideline well. I really do like him in cover 3 and cover 4. So cover 3, cover 4, you'll see like shout out to Mike Renner on this. And this is actually a new evolution to how I end up watching players as well. He ended up challenging me to continue, even though I'm pretty confident with what I do. He continues to challenge me more and more to understand deeper and deeper into it. Not like, okay, what's your assignment and did you do it well? But what's your assignment? What should he have done? It's like there's more intricacies, there's more layers to it, the layers to the onion that I'm still getting to. And you end up seeing the differences in how you should handle a cover 3 versus a cover 4, or how you should handle like based on how your safeties handle cover 3 and cover 4, and like how you should shift your assignment. It's a whole entire new way of looking at players, and it makes me appreciate certain players like Ricardo Hallman a little bit more than what I think I should have. I appreciate him more than what I did, and it is what I should have appreciated him as. But regardless, he ended up being toasted by Jay Stu when he ended up getting to his blind spot. Not a fan of that. He was a little bit too inside. I ended up posting about Evan Stewart on that one on X, so that's the play that I'm talking about. He plays with the movement skills of a nickel. I could see him being a near elite player in the nickel. So there you go. Short range quickness. So that's why I have him listed as a hybrid. Hybrid are the players who are either boundary or slot versatile. I don't think he has to be, but I think he should be in the nickel. Has the tenacity versus the run as well, but has not necessarily been effective. Also, a relatively weaker frame, so that's why I have that -1 it factor, but certainly somebody that I like his overall tools. Thaddeus Dixon is next. Let's talk about his game versus Oregon. Picked up, he ended up identifying a screen developing, so I love seeing that. Good instincts there. You see that grade. And honestly, I think I gave him a little bit too much shit. As the season went on, I thought he did a much better job. Has a little bit of lag with north-south change of direction. He ended up being cooked by a quick slant. Did a cool dip underneath a blocker, and then ended up having an arm tackle that was unfortunately easily broken. So the offensive lineman went for him. He actually dipped under the block, and I'm like, AO? And then ended up unfortunately missing the tackle. But it's like, it's cool to see that you could do that. He ended up having a big hit on a quick out route. I ended up posting that as well. Nice job overall in off man. Not afraid of contact. Has some lower end of burst and has some solid change of direction, or has some change of direction concerns. But that's also popped up not only in coverage, but as well as when he's actually told to blitz. When he blitzes, you can kind of see that bend, similar to an edge rusher. Certain players have a really good one. We'll talk about one that actually did with DJ Harvey, but Thaddeus, not so much. I saw Stewart being price off deep, and he ended. I mean, I saw it too, but Thaddeus ended up seeing price off get beat deep by Jeremiah Evan Stewart. I don't know why I want to call him Jeremiah, but Evan Stewart, and ended up adjusting it to his assignment to assist. Again, B plus on the instincts for that reason. Needs to watch out for stopping early. He can make a very good move and just chill out while the play is still developing. Has some slot reps, even at some weird linebacker sub packages, but he overall flourishes in his zone regardless of where he is. Actually, solid angles in the run game, even taking solid reps at free safety and doing well. A lot of potential for Bill Belichick's star defensive back here at Thaddeus Dixon. Domani Jackson's next. This is someone who I really have a lot of faith in from USC. Had a really tough start to the year for Bama, and I thought he actually ended up doing a lot better as the season progressed. So let's talk about his game versus LSU. Really solid recovery speed when acceleration. Okay, got it. He had really solid recovery speed and had the acceleration to handle a breakaway run. Great job handling a goal line flat route as well. Solid tackle in the box. He tries in zone coverage, but is lacking a little bit with his intuition. Not overwhelmingly explosive, but very, very fast. He did not see a tight end adjust his route into his zone. Luckily, he was not targeted. He ended up having a good jam as well. He got cooked by a slant, but it was bailed by a linebacker getting the interception. So shout out to Deontay Lawson on the goal line. Great recovery speed, has a bad tendency to not understand what's going on in his blind spot and zone, nor adjust to what's going on. Juke badly in open space. Not really encouraging, but I mean, again, a lot of the issues with cornerbacks are a lot easier to identify than the strengths. I do think overall, Domani Jackson has a solid profile, especially dating back to USC, that does have this. Like I said, wouldn't have surprised me to be a first round corner. Seeing him go into year 2 after Bama just in general had a really weird year would not surprise me. D'Angelo Pons blew my fucking mind. I mean, this guy, he's tied at number 6, by the way. Like, I was shocked by how good he was. So let's talk about it. This guy's 170, but he plays like he's 210. I mean, he has the fluidity and explosiveness of a 170, but he ends up like playing physicality wise as a 200 pounder. But let's talk about his game versus Notre Dame. Twitchy and short range, tipped the interception, so good awareness on what's going on around him. Poor angle from the free safety spot versus the run, allowing a huge touchdown run. Ended up on that run showing that he does have a little bit of a concern with that top speed because he did not recover. Solid job in off-zone coverage. Really good flash and off-man versus speed out. Handled a goal line fade well. His reaction time is near elite. He's flashing in cover 2 as well. Has been a non-factor versus the run. Ended up, still kind of working a little bit more, which, again, weird seeing these physical corners not do well versus the run. To be fair, 170 a little bit different than what I was talking about before with Jonquise Hardaway being 195 essentially. Change of direction is pretty damn good. Good hit to stop a conversion. So third down, stopped it. Tries to play the run well, but he does slip off the ball carrier. So not necessarily a great tackler. He knows his range and covers it well. So remember when I was talking about who was that in off coverage? I think it was Malik Muhammad who ended up being, or no, it was Jair Hill, who consistently let up too much range in off coverage, and it was outside of his range of actually being able to handle it. D'Angelo Pons is the exact opposite. He knows exactly how much room he should be giving and what he can end up covering, which I love. He's Velcro impressed. That was a tweet that ended up getting a little bit of traction there. D'Angelo ended up retweeting it, so shout out to him on that. But I ended up giving him the nickname Velcro because he impressed coverage. This guy just sticks to the wide receiver. It's incredible. Bigger wide receivers do not face him at all. I love it. Very impressed. I can see him working with the skill set he has on the outside even more than the inside. Let's speed this up. DJ Harvey. So DJ Harvey transferred from San Jose State. I was like, I'm not going to have any tape on this guy. There were multiple games of it. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, shout out to the tape peeps. But he played UNLV. And with Ricky White there, with the offense they had, I actually thought this was a really good game to see how he can end up processing. So good job sealing the edge on a run. And he was 174. He's up to 186. So a 12-pound gain. Very intriguing to see if that's going to keep up with the athleticism, TBD. He's very, very feisty. Does a nice job seeing the rest of the field in zone. Could be really good in cover 3/4. He flashed some top end speed. Does his job as a corner in the run game to push the running back inside. A little worried with how hesitant he is to break forward in standard man coverage. Nice cover 2 flat rep. He does not have the physicality he tries to use. I will say that he acts more physical than he is. D'Angelo Pons, kind of like D'Angelo Pons is a little bit more applicable with his physicality than DJ is. I think DJ is just better versus the run with it. Good job on a 3rd and 8, baiting the quarterback to throw slightly short of the sticks. I will say, though, he seems a little bit worried about getting beat deep, which he clearly has the speed to handle. So I think that's something USC could get ironed out. Needs to get his head around for the ball, but he's just really damn polished in zone overall. Handles vertical routes well, good in off man too, and ended up having a great pass breakup. DJ Harvey is going to be a stud. I mean, this is going to be someone who I think is going to be on the same tier as what I had last year with Jalen Smith. Maybe not the same grade, but someone who I have a lot of faith in. Jontez Williams, this is a very fun player to watch versus the U. Let's talk about him there. He's not afraid of going into the box. I love that, especially for someone who I could end up seeing being in the slot. Love seeing guys who can end up handling the run and not being afraid of being around some hog mollies there. He ended up having shit tackling form, and he ended up sliding off the running back. Ended up not being a big issue. Worried about how he reacts to cuts because he has solid feet, but allows quick separation. Definitely one of the better cover 3/4 corners with how he plays in space deep. He gave up a large amount of room on a drag, so there you go. You do see that there could be some concern there, but I honestly think that might have been a missed coverage there. Telling other defensive backs what to do in zone, that's super key. You heard me talk about earlier when I'm forgetting which one, but a corner was kind of getting tuned out for not doing things properly. It's good to see someone actually correcting other players. It's a very big mark for, seeing how other players, the IQ of a corner when they can end up helping out other players too. And learned his lesson on the drag and covered it much better the second time around. Weird break in cover 3 away from his wide receiver. I didn't understand what that play was, but it didn't happen again. Too far off and off man. He did not play the sticks, allowing an easy open out for the first down. Not a huge fan of that. I do think that he needs to do a bit better in terms of off man coverage, which is why he has not the same grade as he does in zone. Too far off in off man. Okay, there we go. I already read that line. He can pick up some deep speed, so I do like that. His start stop has been lacking a bit, change of direction wise. His arms look a bit short. He might have to end up being a nickel. I love his tenacity versus the run. I think his only real issue is change of direction, and it isn't even that bad just for man coverage situations. It is. So Jontez Williams, I do think he should be starting right away in the NFL. He's strong, he's physical, he can play the run, he's smart, he's explosive. So I do think Jontez Williams has a very bright future in the NFL. Another great defensive back from Iowa State. Preston Hodge is another great player that I've loved for a hot minute. He's going to be a top 32 player on the board. But let's talk about his game versus University of Arizona. He ended up breaking before the wide receiver ever did when he was in off-man coverage. Good use of physicality overall. Definitely a bit limited as an athlete. Skin-tight press coverage. Could be a bit more patient when in the box. He ended up whiffing on a punch, but he did end up recovering. So his acceleration might be more of a problem, though, than speed. Another rep where he broke on the ball before the quarterback even got into his throw motion. Plays the perfect way down the field. So, playing press the perfect way down the field. So continuing to pop the receiver, staying in position, not over grabbing and stuff. I really like how he does that. The perfect job on a drag route. Very hard to see college defenders defending drag routes well. Dove under trips thinking it was a triple receivers. Ended up diving underneath them, thinking that there was going to be a bubble screen. It was not. Ended up being a drag route and ended up being way out of position. So he tried to guess the play properly, trips, wide receiver, and the under one he was thinking was going to do, the inside one, he was thinking he was going to do a little bubble screen, so he tried to jump outside to stop it. That didn't work out because it ended up actually having a drag instead. So, you think about being out of position with that much, it's a pretty big mistake to have. Sometimes it's not great to jump and be a playmaker, but he has a chance to be the best nickel in the NFL. Low key, he is phenomenal. Did end up having some injury issues though, so TBD on Preston Hodge in that aspect, but he did end up actually gaining some weight as well. Player who I absolutely love. Davison Igbinosun's next. And I still have a ton of faith on this guy. I mean, he just needs to stop grabbing. I think it was 16 penalties last year, but I mean, it was way better than what I saw with Denzel Burke having issues. Iggy is someone who I will continue to hitch my wagon to because I think the right defensive coordinator can actually make him work. Let's talk about his game versus Notre Dame. Love the one-arm reach out to keep a feel on the wide receiver. Nice off-man coverage. Reacts to the quarterback throwing rather than locking into a coverage, then realizing way later that the ball is elsewhere. What the fuck did I mean by that? He reacts to the quarterback throwing rather than locking into a coverage and then realizing way later that the ball is elsewhere. Okay, so he's keeping his eye on the quarterback rather than actually just focusing, honing in on the receiver. So that's what I meant there. I'm like, I'm trying to read from the Rosetta Stone here, guys. Needs to remain poised and not overcompensate with grabbing. I think that's just the biggest issue. He doesn't trust himself enough. Picked up his defensive men's mistake in zone coverage. I do love seeing that. His acceleration's a little bit iffy. Flashing some zone instincts in cover 4. Can have some trouble, not a ton, with change of direction. He has a hit stick to him, so love that. I love how he gets under wide receiver skin. He had a PI and a holding on a tight end. He needs to be aware that he can make up ground and does not need to use that for everyone. It's fine if Bond does that or someone with blazing speed, but not if it is someone that doesn't have that because he has the athleticism to do it. So he needs to have the awareness of, hey, I don't need to grab them. I need to just, like, they're not going to burn me. I have the speed to get there. I don't need to have a flag here. Good pressure. I like him surprisingly in zone and as a blitzer. Huge potential, but needs to be remain working on being more tactical with his grabbing. Avion Trail is such a stud. By the way, it's the same grade for the top 2. So, I mean, this is a tied 1. Avion Terrell is just a different type of player than Mansour Delane, spoiler alert, but Avion Terrell is so fun. Nice job staying composed in open space to make a tackle. Let's talk about his game versus the University of Texas. I should say that as well. Really quick feet. Good job jamming, but did end up slipping and end up hugging the wide receiver. Good job staying active overall. Another big hit. Gave up a bit too much separation and off man on a post route. Missed an ankle tackle. Would like for him to be a bit closer in off coverage. He ended up picking up big time speed, trying to assist a deep route. So he's probably the fastest player in the class. Would like to see him land his hands more in press coverage. Nice pass breakup with timing. Elite recovery speed. Needs to chill with the grabbing. He's good enough not to do that. Still some fine tuning needed, but has huge potential. And Avion Terrell doesn't play like he's 180 pounds. He plays like he's 195, which I do love. I think he can work on the boundary. I think he's going to be great in the NFL. Last but not least, Mansour Delane, someone who I was very much in favor of him returning to school. His mid-year, I ended up, because of that, that's because he ended up not declaring. I ended up not watching the end of the year. But his mid-year tape was absolutely atrocious, in my opinion. I thought there was a lot of confusion in the secondary there for VT. And by the end of the year, and then he ended up, of course, deciding to stay at school, which I thought was a great idea, especially when he transferred to LSU. I think that the floor for him is incredible. And I thought he got way better as the season went on. And he got more comfortable in his own skin. So talk about his game versus Clemson to end this off. He's an LSU transfer. It's going to help him. But let's see how he ended up doing at VT. You guys can see. He's twitchy, but can overcommit, leading to harsher and longer change of directions as seen on a whip route. So when you overcommit, you have to, of course, stop yourself. So it is a little bit more harsher. It might take more time. It ended up happening on a whip route. Solid closing speed. I see a lot less care for timing and deeper off-man coverage. Definitely someone I want closer to the receiver or holding his ground on short to mid-range to the sticks. I can see the vision of this guy as a first-round pick in the right system with the right coaching. He takes a risk, but if I must be honest, they're not always the best ones. I do like how he looks at the quarterback a lot, but I do feel like he can let the wide receiver get away from him. Reaction timing and off man is just not overall great. In breaking routes have gotten him quite a few times. Good tackle after letting up a skinny post, does a good job paying attention to the play, but I would want him to have a bit more coverage discipline. Good patient in open space versus the run, missed a punch, not a fan of how often he misses his punch and gets behind the wide receiver. Great positioning in the red zone for a pass breakup. It's funnily enough, the role is technically not bounce boundary. I literally said he can play anything but off coverage. That's just the big thing for me. But Mansoor has a ton of potential. I think that's why I put him at 1, is because at LSU, I think he's going to take his game up to a whole new level. I'm excited for him, but most importantly, that concludes this video. Thank you so much for watching, spending all this time with me. I need to give my vocal cords a break, and I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Thank you again for joining me on this journey. Get excited. I'm super excited. See you later. Peace.